Welcome in, everybody. ShyCitySports.com. If you just wrapped up Long Gone Summer on ESPN, we are here to talk about it and much, much more. So, again, welcome in. It's a little bit of a different type of thing that we watched. I think we were all kind of expecting here. I'm Steven Johnson alongside Nick Bidding, Zach Pearson. Initial thoughts, guys. What are you thinking here?
A brutal documentary, a brutal 2 hours to sit through.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately here, I think from the perspective of going into this and the hype being around, and even the promotion of it being around Sosa versus McGwire and everything building, this really felt like a St. Louis Cardinals Mark McGwire documentary, like just hands down. And I mean, even from the tones and some of the interviews that they got, and just the footage. And I know we tossed a few messages back and forth when all of this was airing, that there was just some questionable, I don't know, production to it in terms of maybe not using the right things, or including some really weird things that were just really more
Using
fan
era
post.
appropriate footage.
That too. I mean, what was the one?
Why are you inter-
The one?
why are they intercutting Cubs Cardinals games like they're trying to trick us into this is footage from 1998, and you see like Chris Bryant jerseys in the
20 years
background.
apart.
Well,
20, man.
Well, then they were intercutting the footage when Mac was hitting homers like it was going out of style in Florida, excuse me, at the time against the Marlins, and they intercut like footage of Cubs Cardinals fans standing
Yes.
together in the bleachers. Why?
uh,
If this is 1998, it's not like there's not tons
I
of footage out there.
I said it on Twitter, and the game that we're referring to was it late August, like August 19th
Mhm.
at Wrigley Field, and they're showing so it's like Sosa hits a home run there, and it's just old crowd, and then all of a sudden they're showing like a Cubs Cardinals crowd from 2018, and you could definitely tell because like you could tell how
It's crisp
renovated Wrigley
HD
Field is.
footage.
Yeah, and it's HD footage, and then it's like they're just like sitting on the cut for like 10 seconds. I'm like, what the heck is going on? That was really I don't know if they ran out of footage or what the license use is, but I imagine if they have a license to use MLB footage from back then, they also have the license to use footage for now. It's like, did they run out? I just, why would you use that footage from now unless, I don't know, man. I'm
Well,
just, the
I
hell?
didn't understand it either. It's like, there's so much wrong with this, and I just was writing stuff down. But the Cubs Cardinal stuff, it's like there's so much stuff they could have dove into in 2 hours, or maybe even made this a 2 night event and really dove into a ton of stuff. But they just chose not to. They didn't touch on the Cubs Cardinal rivalry. They brought it up a few times, but just in passing for whatever reason. They had some like meathead fans say some stuff back and forth,
Yeah.
and that was it. They didn't dive into Sosa's backstory too much, which is really interesting. Which is a lot of Dominican players' background is really interesting. McGwire's background they dove into a bit more, but they could have touched on the Maris stuff more than they did. There's just all the stuff they did like a 30,000 foot flyby of, and really did a disservice to that entire summer. It was really interesting to me too. Is they burned through a ton of footage real quick too. It seemed like I think by 8:45 or 8:40 or something, I actually messaged a few people I was watching with. on a Discord chat and said, "How is this thing going to be 2 hours? They already have them at 40 homers each in the season. They just burned through like the first 3 months of the season."
Yeah.
They totally skipped Sosa's April and May.
Yeah.
Totally skipped it.
They were like, "Oh, look at the June, the 20 home runs." Like, it was just like plop. Like, here we are. And then just like there was all the talk about Griffey in the beginning. They kind of give him that rub, and then you don't hear from him for like 40 minutes, and then all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, he sucked. He only had 1 home run and 80 at bats." And that's the end of it. It was just so like hodgepodge with that piece of it, and it just didn't really make much of any sense.
It was so poorly done, and then I keep going back to the editing, but there was at one point after Mac hit 62, and I think Sosa had also hit 62 at that point. Sosa had that little back and forth with him where Sosa took the lead briefly at like 66, 65. Yep. They showed none of those home runs back and forth. They just showed footage of buildings in the respective cities with the radio or TV calls over the top of it. I'm here to watch home runs. If you're going to make me sit through this garbage, at least show me dingers. And you're showing me buildings in the respective cities. I know what I'm here for.
There was just so much wrong with it. And I don't know. Like, I guess I was kind of spoiled because The Last Dance, all three of us, I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen the Lance Armstrong. I haven't seen the Bruce Lee one yet. But I just thought, okay, we're going to get another like Chicago-centric or at least one that's spotlighting a Chicago athlete. It's going to be great. It's going to be a good story told. And it's like this was definitely a Mark McGwire, St. Louis Cardinals documentary. Right. And I get McGwire hit more home runs. That's totally fair. Don't hype this up to be the great home run chase at 98. And it's literally all McGwire. I mean, look at the St. Louis groundskeeper got more airtime than Sammy Sosa in the interviews. Whether that's Sosa not wanting to talk. Yeah, literally hands him like $1 million.
Yeah,
like here's $1 million.
My only pushback to that, and that's not the old Cardinals fan coming out at me like I talked about on Twitter today, because when this was going on, I was
you're
actually
not getting
out
of this conversation without we're talking about this. I hope you realize.
Oh, we can talk about it. I'm okay with it. But what I thought was to that point, Zach, because I wonder if they couldn't use much of what Sosa talked about, because it really feels like still to this day, Sosa basically doesn't want to talk about anything with that because he knows immediately the conversation is going to come to steroids and he won't answer those questions. So he's apprehensive to talk about it beyond, it was fun, I had a blast, blah, because Mark McGwire can at least end the conversation because he's come clean, so to speak, on it to a certain extent. And you can round out the story, and Sosa just seems really apprehensive to talk about it.
I think that's a good point. And, to that, maybe that's true. Maybe Sosa really didn't want to talk about that stuff. I thought they could have interviewed him a lot more on, getting his thoughts, because you kind of got the backstory of Mark McGwire kind of growing up in Southern California and then going through the minors and Team USA and then getting called up to the majors and all that. But it's like we barely got anything on Sosa at all. And like during the thing, it was all from McGwire's perspective of what was going on. Like, we didn't even hear Sosa say like, I don't know if they didn't ask him or if he didn't bring it up, but like, what about the roar from the bleachers, the bleacher bums in Chicago? He had interactions with those fans. It was just a little disappointing that, and not to be a Cubs homer or anything, and I get McGwire finished with more home runs, but it just felt like it was McGwire and then the home run chase, and then Sosa was just kind of like the third act, the third fiddle in this whole thing.
Oh, I don't doubt it. I just wonder how much of it has to do with McGwire's still really actively involved with baseball, and Sosa is apparently just happy doing whatever he's doing, and then he's fine and happy with life. But he definitely doesn't seem like it. He says he's happy, but then when it comes up, you can feel the bitterness come out about it. And I was just trying to watch him on Scott Van Pelt here right before he went on, and he still seems just he keeps like, well, why do I have to answer for the entire era? You don't. You just have to answer for yourself. The era, for the most part, has answered for itself. I mean, we know all these huge stars that were on it, including the guy you were up against in this home run chase. We're asking you to answer for what you've done at this point.
Right. I mean, it's come and it's. I'm trying to figure the best word for it. I don't want to say hypocritical. Basically admitting in this, like, oh, everybody was doing it, like it's not a big deal, to, okay, well, if it's not a big deal, just get it over with. If
Mhm.
you obviously have feelings about not being invited back to Wrigley Field and being such a part of Cubs history, it's like, okay, like why? Like what is the holdup here? Is it just to use that as the excuse as to why you don't feel good about, being that fall guy? And it's like, it just, I don't know, like, just the way that he goes about it just doesn't rub me the right way as a Cubs fan. Even growing up and watching it, it's like you're making a bigger deal out of it, yet you're downplaying it half the time. Like, I don't understand what the long play is here with how you're doing this.
I think in a way it's weird because it's obviously like an ego thing, but in a way I think he doesn't want to fully talk about it and do that stuff. I think tonight was actually when he said, to your point, everyone was doing it. Why me? Why does everyone have to come back to me? I think if he would have won the home run chase that year, I think it would have been different. I think he actually would have been more likely to talk about it. I think he doesn't want to be forgotten because you think about it, it's always McGwire, and truly the forgotten guy in this whole story is Ken Griffey Jr. I mean, he hit 56 home runs that
Yeah.
year, and no one remembers that. So I think as for Sosa, as weird as it sounds, I think it's more of like an ego, like, yeah, I'm already kind of being forgotten as a second guy in this home run chase. Maybe I don't want to be, don't want to really fully speak on it. However, it's time for the Cubs to welcome him back. Like, I know, Nick, on how your thoughts are on it today. I forgot to respond to you back on Twitter, bad, but for me, it's like, what does this current regime have to do with back then? Like, what the hell is the Ricketts so mad about that he wasn't there? And I get, yeah, okay, steroids, but it's like Sosa said. I mean, everyone was using them back then, stuff like that. It's like, does Rick? Is there like some sort of deal when they signed, bought the team? And, oh, you can't bring back Sammy until he fully apologizes, or, I mean, I think it's time to literally forget about it. Just accept it. Welcome the guy back. I mean, the Cardinals did it with McGwire, and to the point, I mean, like you said, Nick, he has had a more active role in baseball.
Well, he was coaching for the Cardinals for a bit too. He came back as a hitting coach for them.
2010 or something like that, I think,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
I just bring Sammy back, please. It's just I forgot who said the quote at the end. Was it Riggleman where he's like, I just don't want Sammy to be forgotten and it's too late. Like, that'd be just all time, worst case scenario.
I mean, given Chicago's history with how they treat their most popular players of sports lore, I mean, this does kind of fall in line. I will say that. I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
you got the Bulls with MJ, which, as we all know, is very, very recent, with everything being brought back up with The Last Dance and
Derrick Rose.
Derrick Rose, exactly. And I mean, for a while there, the Blackhawks weren't really the best either until they kind of got their act together, 10, 15
Bobby
years ago.
Hall.
Right. I mean, it just, I don't know what it is. I really don't know what it is that's so hard to just figure this out and stop being, I don't know. I mean, I guess
He's not going to apologize.
no, he's not. I mean,
No.
you look at him and you look at the way that he carries himself, and I mean, I think we can all agree
Well, he looks like he's Scarface now. I mean, he looks like he's living some sort of weird drug lord lifestyle in South Florida.
I was gonna say it looks like he's made some poor decisions over the last few years of his life. However, I mean, that's just who Sammy is. That's who he's always been, in terms of that '98 season to now. Like that's just his personality. So, I don't quite understand what the holdup is, despite the fact that it's very apparent that there's very differing sides that like to shift around with their various I guess outlooks on it on almost a daily basis. It seems like it shifts.
I don't know. I guess I'm with you a little bit too, Zach, because I get it. Where what does the current Cubs brass really get out of Sammy basically, apologizing, coming to them hat in hand, and admitting what he did. We all know what he did. I mean, it's obvious. I think the way he left the organization, and he's really just not shown any contrition towards it since. And really, he hasn't shown much interest in the Cubs in coming back and being a part of that organization since either. I think both organizations just need to sit, or both the organization and Sammy just need to be able to sit down in a room and just clear the air a little bit. And I think part of clearing that air is Sammy coming to terms and admitting what happened. I don't think the Cubs want to put him out there, for better or for worse. And if people don't agree with it, they don't. I don't think the Cubs want to put him out there and basically allow him to act like he didn't do anything wrong and just be able to mask everything that he did. So, and thereby the Cubs looking like they still condone it, or they're part of like this charade that's still going on X amount of years later. That's the only PR spin I can kind of see from the Cubs' perspective. But I think both are at fault. I think the Cubs need to be less abrasive with it and less stubborn. I think Sammy does too. I mean, if Mark McGwire and A-Rod and all these guys can come out and basically say, hey, I messed up, my bad, whatever. I mean, there's no reason that Sosa can't either.
Right.
Because there's precedent. Like, Sosa's working against precedent of former players doing this.
Well, and not only that, and Carlos on Facebook brings this up as well. It's not just the steroids. You have the corked bat. You have leaving the game early in 2004. I mean, it's not just one thing here. Unlike McGwire, where obviously you're looking at steroids, and he did finally come clean, and he did do all that, as we all saw at the end of tonight. But to not even.
But overall, he was a good citizen and good teammate.
Right.
There wasn't that other baggage with him.
Right. It just. I don't know, because I recall in 2003, like when the corked bat happened, it was played off as, oh, well, that was a batting practice bat. That's why that happened. It's like, dude, like,
was it?
like, come on, like, really, like, we're really gonna go down this path? Like, what's the point here? And then I liked how they didn't touch on it entirely, but they kind of hinted on it with the 2005 congressional hearing, where he magically forgot how to speak English. Like, it just
smart.
Yeah.
So, I mean, okay, so the steroid thing.
Yeah.
What I found really interesting was when they were talking about McGwire kind of getting, those questions about the usage. God, what was he using during
androstenedione?
Yeah, okay. And they talked to a bunch of players. Did you notice one of those players who they talked to who was like talking about the steroid kind of era and what was going on and how it wasn't illegal?
Craig Biggio.
I mean, who's the guy they're talking to? Biggio, the Hall of Fame, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. That just kind of was, for me, it was like, well, maybe it opens up a door eventually for these players to get in the Hall of Fame that were in that steroid era. I don't know. I just found that.
I think though, just to be clear though, I think when Biggio was on screen talking about it, he was talking. They had transitioned at that point over to creatine. About Biggio taking creatine every day. So I do want to make that distinction there, because that is much different than andro, which is now banned because it's basically a type of an anabolic steroid. It produces testosterone. Excuse me.
The other thing was interesting. Kerry Wood standing up for Sosa.
Yeah, that was
and looking gaunt.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny.
I mean, from my understanding, they didn't. The boombox argument was over that, right? It was Wood and Sosa.
Yes.
With the music. Okay, yeah, that was kind of interesting to hear Kerry Wood kind of speaking up. And Kerry Wood's been involved with the Cubs over the years, as he should. So maybe this will kind of open up a door with maybe the Cubs being like, okay, Kerry is on board with this. Riggleman was on board. I don't know how much, weight he kind of holds there with the Cubs, but you know what I mean? Like, maybe it kind of opens up the door just a little bit where the Cubs kind of were like, hey, probably maybe we should bring him back or something like that. But I just kind of found that, Wood defending them and having nothing but nice things to say about Sosa was pretty damn interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
at least in context of the questions he was asked.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they weren't going to ask him about the boombox or anything like that, but it was positive stuff. Could have gone the other way.
Yeah, it was weird though that like even to introduce Sammy into the whole thing. At first we get, oh well, that whole season was about Kerry Wood, and then we get what is quite possibly one of the best outfield signs I have seen in my lifetime. Who
Yes,
needs
I laughed
Viagra
so
when you
hard.
have wood? Uh,
that was great.
I love that. I loved everything about that. Yeah, I don't know. Like even that from the get go, it felt like it kind of stumbled out of the gate. Like they needed some additional reason to even include the Cubs into this. Let alone Sammy Sosa to intertwine him into the story when it was pretty damn obvious, you know, who he was and what he meant to that home run race. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they skipped pretty much April and May for Sosa, and like you said, they did talk about Wood. They showed the 20 strikeout game, how he was like kind of the top prospect. It was just odd, man. I guess I just kind of expected a little more, but it just really felt like it was a Mark McGwire 30 for 30. But hey, here's also Sammy Sosa, who did everything he could to challenge him. Could have won that race at the end. We probably should just kind of throw him in here and put him in the background almost.
Well, and not only that, but I felt like there were points where I'm like, okay, like you're kind of hinting at things that you should be hinting at and you should be kind of pushing more towards. And they mentioned it a couple times. First, when the steroids first came into play, when the reporter found the bottles in McGwire's locker, and then again at the end with the responsibility of the whole thing. The fact that it was another 3-4 years until anybody really spoke up about it. That the media just brushed it off because they just took the player's word for it. That the league really didn't care because after the strike had happened in 1994, they were just happy to have anybody watching baseball. And just like this trickle down effect of everything, and the fact that they tapped on it, but they really didn't put too much more emphasis on it. That baseball's at fault. The entire system of baseball, from top to bottom, commissioner to media, was entirely at fault for this kind of dragging out. And not only that, but potentially even allowing the situation of steroids to go much further than it probably should have, all the way to the mid 2000s to the end of the early 2000s.
Quick thing on that too is one thing I always don't bristle at, 'cause that's maybe too much of a reaction, but I always push back a little bit on the players when they say, even McGwire when he says it, where, well, it wasn't illegal, no one said you couldn't do it, and that's actually not 100% true, because in 1990 the commission, I think it was Faye Vincent at the time, released a memo banning the use of steroids, and there's a list of stuff that was banned, and I think it was around 1990. But the problem is the memo didn't carry any weight because it didn't have any teeth behind it. There was no way to enforce it because the players wouldn't agree to testing and basically wouldn't agree to penalties for the use of it. And that was always a chip in the CBA, where whenever they would negotiate the CBA, they wouldn't allow for testing, wouldn't allow for testing. The commissioner's office actually banned steroids. I think it was 1990, 89, 91, somewhere in that area. But it had no teeth because the players wouldn't allow it to in CBA negotiations. So that is a little bit of an out from McGwire that isn't necessarily 100% true.
Yeah. The other thing I was gonna say, what the hell does the Billy Goat Tavern have anything to do with this?
I think
They did show Guthrie's, which is one of my favorite places to hang out after games, but
But like that was Billy Goat Tavern in Navy Pier, I'm pretty sure.
yeah, that was not even like the Billy Goat Tavern.
No, like, and he showed it 3 times.
I think to Nick's point, when we were watching, the editing work on this needed some serious help,
So bad.
and that was just a microcosm. If
I hope someone got college credit for this, because that's like
Yeah.
it looks like who put it together. Jesus.
The kids in the car listening to the radio.
oh
What the hell is that? Driving in like wherever the hell they were driving. That was like early on.
Well,
It was
like that, and then when they were hyping up the buildup of McGwire hitting 61 and then 62 against the Cubs, and when 62 happens, they decide to, for the first play of it, show the back of Buck's head in the radio booth.
That was 61. That wasn't
Oh, was
62. That was 61.
Okay.
It was 61
Okay.
because 62 was all Traskell and they showed him taking it off his shoe tops.
Okay.
But no, I thought the same thing, Steven, I was like, oh my God, they're not going to show the actual home run.
Like one of the most important plays in all of baseball, and you decide to show the back of the radio broadcaster's head. Like
was that the one
A
that
play
was
so
like,
important that it made that man cry. You don't actually show the play. They never showed the broadcast play. They just showed it from like like a camcorder in center field.
was 61? Is that the one you guys are talking about? Where at first they showed it going to like right field, and it was like a slicing line drive. Did anyone catch that one?
No, I don't know.
It was a McGwire home run. It was one of the big ones. It might have been 61. They showed him swinging, and the ball's like going to right field, like slicing into foul territory. And it was like a split second, and they cut it over to the home run, landing in left field. No one.
I don't know
I
if that
need
was
to go
61.
back and
I know
watch
60.
this now.
Yeah, don't make us go back and rewatch
No,
this.
you don't have to. I'm pretty sure I saw that. I mean, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure because I stopped them. Like, they're not going to show the home run, are they?
Zach, at this point, I can't say anything that you saw bad editing wise didn't exist because it probably did.
Okay, here's something else I want to talk about. Another thing that it was kind of pushed in the back seat, and they mentioned it in the middle. Actually, they only mentioned the Cardinals part of it in the middle, and then they waited until like the final 20 minutes. They mentioned the Cardinals were 500 and no one was like going to games. No mention of the Cubs in a wild card race, a 3-team wild card race that came down to the final 3 games. And the craziness that happened was like going into that final weekend, the Mets, the Cubs, and the Giants were all tied or like right there. And the Cubs,
they played a 163 game playoff to get into the playoffs, didn't they?
Yeah, they played they showed up. They showed
briefly.
Mm-hmm.
They showed the last out, the pop up to Mark Grace.
A Rod Beck.
Yep, and I always remember the Rod Beck reaction to that, and just that the main camera view from center field on that, and it felt weird that it was placed there, and then you get Sammy going, well, he's the home run king, but I came in second, but I won MVP, and we're going to the playoffs. Like, ha ha ha.
It's like going into that, because they mentioned going into that final 3-game series. Remember, there was like the final weekend. They were tied at 60? I don't know, 64, 65, or maybe 68, whatever it was.
Sammy might get an extra game to go past Mac if it happens.
Yeah, and they mentioned nothing about the Cubs are right there with the Mets and Giants for 1 wild card spot. Back then, obviously, there's not 2 wild card spots, and the Mets pretty much lost 2 out of 3 were out of it, and the Cubs lost a key game to the Brewers to force that 163. There literally no mention. I thought it would bring more excitement. Okay, the Cubs are in an actual playoff chase. The Cardinals are 500, and it's just like nothing throughout the entire thing of that. Because I mean, growing up watching that, I mean, yeah, you watch Sosa, you watch the home run chase, but I was like, that was pretty damn exciting for the Cubs overall to be kind of in a wild card chase that summer at least.
Yeah.
Like I said, you could have made this a 4-hour doc if you really wanted to. I'm really glad they didn't, based upon how terrible they had done this one. But content-wise, if this was done correctly, this could have been a 2 or 3 hour documentary. They could have rolled, because there was just so much to cover. Because baseball's such a long season, and you're covering it in 2 hours, and there's so many great backstories with 98. You could have covered the strike more in 94. You could have touched a little bit on how Cal Ripken kind of started the wave of people coming back with breaking Gehrig's record, I think in 95 or 96 for the consecutive game streak. That kind of started this wave that then they picked up and ran with in 98. It just, none of this stuff was touched on it or expanded on to the point where it really made it dynamic. It really just kind of came off as we're going to show a bunch of home runs, as many as we can, and we're going to try to make this focal point, this 2-game set between these two teams where Mac breaks the record. But even then, it was just really shoddily done. It was really disappointing, just really utterly disappointing, because there was a lot of potential here.
Oh, there definitely was.
The other thing that was kind of quirky was, so the son that they interviewed was the Bat Boy, right?
Correct.
What the hell was that story where he's like, oh yeah, one night we were leaving St. Louis and my parents or my mom and stepmom were like, yep, we got to go. I think he told it like completely wrong because they were in St. Louis when they played the Cubs. He's like, oh yeah, after he hit 61, I got to pack up and like go. And it's like, well, no, he hit 61 hit 61 and 62 in that same series.
Yeah.
I don't know. That story just kind of really didn't make sense. Maybe it went over my head, but it didn't really make sense.
This guy, you could tell, did a terrible job interviewing, because here's the thing is, I know Sosa's walked off interviews before. He walked off one with Shap a few years ago when he was asked directly about the steroids thing. But there's so many just direct questions you could have been asked, even when Sosa's sitting there, hey, I'm good. Ask the direct question. You're doing a documentary on this gigantic thing. Who cares if he walks away? That's what you want. You want that moment so you can say, he looks guilty, here it is. Yeah. Even if you're not, and it's not so much not being a Sosa fan, but you're trying to prove a point and you're trying to make a point and make something watchable, and you just kind of let him laugh and dust his hands and be done with it. It's like, that's not why we're here. That's not why you're here. You're not doing your job.
Yeah, like we said, all around, it was just, God, it was just so odd.
It left a lot to be desired, just from beginning to end, and it's weird saying it, because I mean, just everything about this. I mean, even when this was announced, a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, right? Is when
one of the last dances, or right around the time or something, when they were saying, June was going to be a big month.
Yeah, it was announced that they were going to move it up.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, it was during a big event. They kind of sneaked it in. I can't remember what event. It wasn't the ESPYs. There was an event last year. Maybe it was the World Series. It was something big in baseball, and they kind of sneaked it in with like an ESPN like 30 for 30. It was like coming soon, but it was like no footage. It was like a quick clip of like Sosa McGwire. Yeah, so it was announced a while ago. I don't know. There's not a lot of hype around it, I guess.
It's really ironic, only for the fact that this was like the epitome of what's currently going on in baseball, just with how this came across, of just like a complete just train wreck of, this could be so much better. We don't know really what's going on. We feel like there are all these missteps. I feel like the Players Association dealing with the owners right now, and we don't even know if we're going to get any baseball. So this could be the last taste of baseball that we get outside of Korean Baseball League for quite some time.
Let me ask you this: when I think I know the answer to this. I don't know if it was ever officially announced. When do you think they had this plan for originally without the coronavirus?
I would bet All-Star break.
That's exactly what I was
that was my guess.
That would have been my
gut. I mean, I could see this playing after, probably not the home run derby and everything.
But that off day when everyone's going back after the All-Star game's over,
Wednesday or Thursday, whatever it is.
Yep.
Something that
or the Sunday leading into the All-Star game, because isn't Sunday isn't there like a weekend travel day in there for the All-Star break? Just one of those off days, but a weekend would make sense.
That would have to be the case, I'd imagine. But I mean, even if that were the case, and moving it up, and we know that like the Last Dance was rushed to be even like edited with those last few episodes. I can't imagine that this is the same case with this only being 2 hours long. Really, it's 3-4 week difference in when it would be released, and we knew several months ago that this was coming. So they had all the footage because all they were using was 1998 and clips from Cubs-Cardinals games last year. So God, I just like the one that stood out to me the most was when they were showing a clip of Wrigley in the left field bleachers, and it was a timestamp for one of the games in 1998 that the Cubs were playing, and you could see the brand new scoreboard in right field, and I'm like, this isn't 1998, and then it immediately like quickly cut to this fuzzy WGN footage of the game when Sammy hit a homer, and it's like, what is this?
That was my second one. That was my second most obvious. My first was still, if you go back and watch those the Marlins games ones where McGwire's just abusing the Marlins pitching staff. They actually, at one of the inner like junctions of it or spliced in, is shots of fans, but it's Cubs Cardinals fans at Wrigley in the stands, and they're trying to make it seem like these people are watching McGwire in Florida in 1998.
Or the Cubs marquee with the Toyota logo.
Yeah.
Right
Oh
below.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, hell, even the background for us right now, it was very difficult to find something that was from 1998 that was large enough. So you may notice a Toyota symbol in the background of this. I digress, though. I don't know. Like, it feels like it would be so easy working with ESPN for this to get enough footage. Like, that's the thing that just blows my mind the most out of this, is wouldn't ESPN want this to be as good as it possibly could be, knowing that, you know, their ratings are in the toilet right now, and so if they want to put out good content, if they want people to watch, they're going to want to put things together that are compelling, that are clean, that are historically relevant and accurate. But no.
I have to wonder though, because MLB has that, they have the worst video sharing policy.
Also true.
Because they have MLB Media, which completely swallowed up any chance they had to expand. Like, you think, not to go off my soapbox here, you think a game that wants to build with the younger generation, what's everyone on? Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You share an MLB clip, you're pretty much going to get it taken down eventually. Right. Any other sport, they're kind of more lenient on it, and they like encourage, people to share and stuff like that. I wonder if like MLB Media had a restriction on how much actual footage they can use and what footage they can use, because you think about it. So all the Cubs games in 1998, they were on WGN or Fox.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, ESPN.
There might have been some ESPN Sunday Nighters or something, but
or ESPN Sunday Night. Yeah, good call. So I don't know. I just, maybe the Fox networks didn't want to get into it much, and also not a lot of. How many Joe Buck interviews did we get?
One.
That were present day.
Present.
I don't even think we had
I
a
don't think
present
there was
day
a single
one.
present day one.
Yeah, because he had the one where he was really young, and he was talking about his father and how he didn't get to and all this and whatever it was. Or no, Chip Carey was talking about Harry and not getting the information, but yeah, we only got one Joe Buck interview, and I'd
be interested to know that too. The only thing that doesn't wash with me with that theory, for one reason, is how like you showed like 900 home runs these guys hit, and you're telling me the MLB lockdown and you showing like B-roll of like 1998 crowds, like that's where they drew the line, was you showing like era appropriate crowd shots. No, it wouldn't shock me, but at this point, who knows? It's just you could show all the home runs you want, but when it comes to the crowd, sorry.
I
think that was.
And on top of that, and I think that, and again, I know we were exchanging a lot of messages back and forth about like, oh God, this is just a Mark McGwire documentary. This is very Cardinal heavy. The fact that they made the point to call out the old Busch Stadium crowd for giving Sammy Sosa a standing ovation, and just all this stuff, I'm like, this is so Cardinals. Like, so Cardinals, and I couldn't take it, and I'm just like, I really just want to shut this off right now and not watch the rest of this, because I feel like this was created by the St. Louis Cardinals at this point to show that they have the best fans in baseball, which we all know. I had to stick it in there. I had to stick it in there.
And they said it in there.
Yeah, did McGwire say like to do it in front of the best fans in baseball? I was like, and then we got the call of, look how great the St. Louis Cardinals fans are applauding Sammy Sosa in his first at bat. I was just like, oh my God, puke. Speaking of Cardinals, We got to hear the story
Yes, we
here.
do.
What story? Oh, it's not nearly as interesting as you'd think. I just my dad was a Cardinals fan growing up. I'm a Cubs and Red Sox fan.
Okay.
He just grew up as a Cardinals and Red Sox fan for whatever reason. A kid grows up as a fan of teams, and I honestly think part of it is they did cover in the doc as Cardinal games were so easily available all over the country. And I mean, grew up in Illinois, and I was just raised a Cardinals fan. And then what happened was, I started listening to a lot of sports talk radio in the late '90s, early 2000s. And I can really say the last time I really followed the Cardinals closely, like as a fan, was probably '99, 2000, like right after, like Ricky and Keel was one of my favorite players the last year as a Cardinals fan. So that gives you an idea. So that was '99 or 2000 when he went haywire in the playoffs. But really, I transitioned to being a Cubs fan. Just I listened to WSCR so much, honestly, and I just knew more about the Cubs just from just being inundated with information about them and their farm system and everything. And it's easier to get to Chicago for games. So at that point, I found myself following the Cubs more because it was all the information I was getting. So I just kind of eventually became a Cubs fan in probably like '01 or '02 is probably the time that I kind of officially switched over from Cardinals to Cubs. It was just a childhood thing. And then as I became a young adult, the information I was getting changed just because I wasn't like listening to Cardinal sports talk radio. It was all Chicago talk radio because all my other teams were Bears, Bulls, all this other stuff. So I was just getting all that. So it's not nearly as interesting, and it's not like,
What the hell is wrong with me? What have I been doing?
Yeah, it wasn't like some like cathartic moment. It was like, oh my God, I've seen the light. I'm going. It was just like, no, I just listened to a lot of sports radio, and this is the team info I'm getting.
I mean, it could be a lot worse, man. You could have been like a Packers, a Cardinals, a Bulls, and a Blackhawks fan. Like, I don't understand how any of that stuff works, to be honest.
Yeah.
No, that's a weird way. And the Cardinals Cubs thing, I honestly, until I got into junior high, I didn't even really understand the rivalry between the two teams. I just remember being in like eighth grade, getting into it, like, because all my Cubs fans friends after the Kerry Wood game were going insane. And I can remember where I was. I don't know why I can remember this kind of stuff. I can remember where I was walking out of gym class across the street back to my school from the gym. And I was like, he's going to blow out his arm anyway. Have you seen the way he throws? And then later that year, he blew out his arm. And I was like, and then in retrospect, I was like, oh man, I feel really bad because by the time I hopped on the bandwagon, he only had like a year or two left.
Oh, so you're the reason why. No.
Yeah, it was me. I had. That year for Christmas, I got a Kerry Wood voodoo doll, and I was sticking pins in his elbow.
Oh man!
But no, like I said, not a very interesting story. But yeah, it's just kind of one of those things where you grew up a fan, and then you get more information, and you just kind of switch because you quit following the one team.
You made the right choice.
I hope so.
How about
tell you what, it was rough for a while though. Being a Red Sox and a Cubs fan for a good 15-year stretch. Luckily, I got a couple Red Sox championships early on.
How about our guy from the Jordan documentary, the security guard making an appearance?
Wait, when? I missed that.
You didn't catch it? They were talking.
No.
I think it was one of the night games. They showed Jordan in the box.
Yeah, was that what it was? No, I didn't notice the security guard in the box.
Right next to him.
Was it when Jordan threw the first pitch at the wild card game?
Might have.
Or when they were talking about Sosa being at that level of Michael Jordan?
I think it was before that. It was a night game, and it was Sosa hit a home run, and like you see Jordan like the press box jumping up and down or something like that, and then he's wearing
some really high-waisted jeans.
Yeah, and the pant leg is like this, so it's like.
No, I remember that scene, but I didn't catch the security guard in it.
Yeah, right next to him. Yep. I didn't catch. I saw it on Twitter. I will admit that. Hand up.
No classic shrug from him this time around.
Yeah.
No.
Oh man. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like I said. I mean, the consensus here, throughout the discussion, being obviously a lot to be desired. Is there another 30 for 30 doc on the horizon here? I feel like there hasn't been a whole lot more,
If there is one, I haven't paid attention and seen it. advertised, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I just I haven't seen one advertised.
They had a 10-part thing that they're going to premiere in like July on, I think it's like gymnastics overseas something, but that's an online.
Oh, that one. Yeah, okay. I did see that ad tonight. I wasn't sure what it was for.
And I also think it's one of those ones where it's like they're only like 12, 13 minutes long each, or something small.
Yeah.
They're like the 30 for 30 shorts, but there's like 10 to 12 of them. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if they've announced anything. Yeah, I don't know if they've actually announced any of the future 30 for 30s or any of them have leaked or anything.
Well, I mean,
I'm sure the well's pretty dry right now.
If anybody wants to do one on the 2016 Cubs and not Matt Liston, feel free. That's where I'm at this point in time with this. But I don't know where this is going to necessarily go. I think we've pretty much reached the end of Chicago-based 30 for 30s for the time being, unless we get a surprise of some sort.
We'll get a Blackhawks one eventually.
I was just gonna say Patrick Kane needs his own. Like Kane and Taze need their own one, or at least give us one on Kaner. Like 30 for 30 on Kaner would be amazing.
I'm looking now. Yeah, I don't see. I don't see anything that shows any leaks or anything of what's upcoming. So I guess they probably haven't announced.
I think everybody's just praying for sports to return at this point in time in some capacity, but maybe we'll get it, maybe we won't. It's an ever-moving target these days, as we all know.
We're definitely not hopeful for baseball. Basketball and hockey look like they're coming back, and so does football. But baseball does not look hopeful.
It blows my mind that Major League Baseball has not been able to take advantage of this. But another conversation for another day, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, well, that's going to do it here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, whether it's been on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, for this recap of Long Gone Summer, whether it did meet your expectations or maybe it didn't. If it did, you're probably a Cardinals fan. But nevertheless, whenever the next bit of news comes out or we get another one of these documentaries, we'll be back here with another live recap. And maybe, who knows, next time you see us, we will be talking actual sports that are happening of some type. Who knows? At this point,
that'll be weird.
We're just sitting on the sidelines drinking beer and waiting for any type of news to get us back into live sports that are not, again, Korean baseball. So we'll see what happens, right? Right? Yeah. I don't know.
I hope so. I hope there's live sports soon.
At some point. There has to be at some point, but
there has to be.
Unless the world ends. But it's 2020. We don't know what's going to happen the second half of 2020. The first half was so much fun. So, that'll do it here. For Nick Vitting, Zach Pearson, I'm Steven Johnson. Thank you for tuning in, and we will talk to you very, very soon. Again, whenever live sports decide to return. Take care, everybody.